He didn't like watching a fight that wasn't fair. But Hyen stood up and held her sword tighter, like she wasn't going to give up. Jinwoo looked surprised. What was she thinking? Hyen wasn't a beginner who didn't realize how much stronger her opponent was. She wasn't someone who would fight if she didn't have a chance to win. So did she have a plan? Jinwoo hoped she knew what she was doing. Because of his connection with Baru, Jinwoo could sense that the enemy was holding back even more strength. Hyen still fought with all her strength. Even though she was clearly weaker, Jinwoo felt worried. He looked carefully at the two fighters and frowned. Baru didn't understand why Hyen kept fighting. He had shown her many times that he was much stronger, so why didn't she give up? The strongest ant, who was used to winning every fight, became annoyed at this human female, who he thought was no match for him. Baru was very angry because she remembered a time when she was strong and in charge. She thought to herself, how could this person Baru suddenly appeared in front of Hyen and looked directly into her eyes? Anyone could tell just by looking at them which one was more powerful and which one was weaker. Hyen should have felt danger. Baru tried to make Hyen give up by appealing to her most basic feelings, but it didn't work. Just as Jinwoo thought, Hyen had one more trick up her sleeve. Hyen was best at a move called sword dance. She moved quicker and quicker, making graceful curves with her sword as if she were dancing. Clang, clang, clang. But as Baru kept blocking Hyen's fast and constant attacks with his claws, he started to look annoyed. Enough fun in games. With just his hand, Baru caught the sword coming toward him and broke it. Crack! Half the sword snapped off. Even though things hadn't gone as planned, Hyen was very angry. She knew she only had one chance. She put all her magical energy into the broken sword she was holding. This special ability was called Sword of Light. She had never used this skill before. She could only use the special attack when she really needed to. Because it used a lot of energy, the sword glowed with a bright light. Baru had relaxed his defense after breaking her sword, so she jumped at him and pushed her weapon forward. Jinwoo was very surprised. No, he hadn't been worried about Baru. But before he could react, the sword went through Baru's middle and shone with gold light. A loud scream filled the air. In that quick moment, Baru realized something. She was his opponent. Baru wasn't worried about being hurt. But if he was defeated, this woman would attack his leader. So the strong feeling all the shadow soldiers had, the most important rule in their minds, took over. Protect our master. Baru's mind changed, and she forgot Jinwoo's order to fight without harming her. Baru changed into a frighteningly large creature to protect his owner. His body grew bigger, his jaws became strong enough to break metal, and his claws grew long and sharp. Stop. Baru was ready to attack the person who was bothering his king with his 10 powerful claws. He swiped at them. Just as his claws were about to reach the person, Jinwoo quickly ran forward in time. I told you to stop. He stared angrily at Baru while holding onto both of the creature's claws with his hands. Baru shook with fear when his eyes met Jinwoo's. He didn't even try to pull the sword out of his stomach, before jumping back and falling to the ground, asking Jinwoo for forgiveness. Please, my king, have mercy. Jinwoo understood why Baru had done what he did, because his strong desire to protect his master had been so powerful. It felt like a thought Jinwoo could hear. Jinwoo looked at Baru with an angry face for a moment before looking away. Thump. Cass fell to the floor, too tired to stay standing after almost dying. Are you okay? As Jinwoo walked closer, Cass tried to get up but couldn't. She could only look at the floor and nod. Yes, she didn't seem very sure of herself. Jinwoo helped her stand up and asked, why are you trying so hard? You don't have to work so much to join our group, do you? She didn't say anything. It was just a test. It was also a test meant to keep her from joining. She had been so focused on winning that she used a very powerful and risky ability. This wasn't just about wanting to win the competition. So I need to ask. Jinwoo spoke carefully, trying not to make her angry. Do you like me or something? What? She looked surprised, like she couldn't believe what she heard, so Jinwoo just shrugged his shoulders. Was that not the answer? But then Hyen thought for a moment before answering. Yes, I think I do. At the Hunter headquarters in the United States, the director was not happy to hear that his team hadn't been able to convince Jinwoo to join them. He wanted to hear what happened straight from the assistant director, not just read a report. The assistant director came to his office with Norma. What happened? The director asked right away, before they could even sit down. This was the first time anyone had said no to a recruitment offer, that included Norma. Ever. Michael stood looking sad, and kept his head down. I am really sorry, sir. I didn't ask you to apologize. The director pushed a button that locked the door and covered the glass walls of his office. Now the room blocked all sound from getting in or out. They were careful to keep information about Norma secret. They didn't use phones or emails when talking about her. So the director still didn't know what had happened in Korea. What happened over there? Michael looked at Norma. She nodded slowly and then Michael spoke. Mrs. Sellner watched Hunter Sung, and the director knew how Mrs. Sellner's special skill worked, so what she saw was very important, just as important as finding new people to join them. According to Mrs. Sellner, Hunter Sung's Michael's mouth was dry a king. What? The director stood up quickly. Of all the powerful people Mrs. Sellner had met, she had only called 3 of them kings. The very best hunters were strong enough to cause big changes around the world, and Jinwoo was now one of them. The director looked at Norma. Does this mean Hunter Sung is as powerful as a hunter who protects an entire country? She shook her head. Oh, the director looked confused, just like Michael had been. Norma took a deep breath. I should explain everything. She started talking right away. I know you both understand what I can do. The director and the assistant director both nodded. The director spoke first. You said people with special abilities had connections to a powerful energy source on the other side. When Norma looked into the eyes of someone with these abilities, she could see a pathway connecting them to that energy source. Sometimes the pathway glowed very brightly, because so much energy was flowing through it. Those were the powerful people we talked about earlier. So what makes Hunter Sung special? He doesn't have a natural ability. Norma felt a chill. The moment I looked into his eyes, I saw a darkness looking back at me. Oh no. It was like looking at pure darkness. The assistant director said, but he is helping many people by hunting monsters. I don't think he's a bad person. If he were truly evil, Jinwoo would have immediately defeated the 2 agents who pointed their weapons at him. But the Korean man didn't seem bothered by it. Norma shook her head, looking serious. It's not about whether Hunter Sung is a good person or a bad person. I'm talking about where his power comes from. The director had been listening carefully with his hand under his chin, and he finally spoke. Are you sure he's a really good hunter? Norma nodded. Hunter Sung doesn't get his strength from an outside source. His power comes from within himself, so nothing can hold him back. That means there's no limit to how strong he is. Michael shivered as he said the words. He didn't understand how strong Jinwoo might become. The director was thinking hard after hearing everything. He finally nodded, making up his mind. Thank you, Mrs. Sellner. After Norma left, he took the assistant director to the basement of the Hunter Command Center. Where are we going, sir? To level 9 below the main basement. The room where they keep the files. There's more than just files down there. As the elevator went down, he explained. If Mrs. Sellner's talent isn't enough to bring him here, we need to find another way. Jinwoo was young and very strong. If he was as powerful as Norma said, it didn't matter where his strength came from. A knife used for protection might look like a threat to other people. The director really wanted to have the knife that belonged to Jinwoo Sung. When he reached the 9th level underground, he opened the door and went inside. Some workers said hello as he walked by, but he didn't even look at them. Do you remember the first really dangerous portal? Of course. Michael could never forget the terrible event when a monster broke out of a portal and badly damaged the western United States. The government promised a large reward to the world's top hunters if they could defeat the strongest monster from a dangerous portal. They were successful, but only 5 hunters lived through the battle. One powerful monster had killed many of the world's best hunters. If they hadn't been so brave, the country would have been lost. Because of this, the 5 people who saved the country were given every right and power the United States had. Each one became as important and influential as the country itself. This is where the idea of a top hunter came from. The director said the name of the magical creature that caused the biggest disaster ever. Kamish the dragon. Hunters of magic users said Kamish meant a flame that never goes out. The director went into the final room and opened a safe, finding a rune stone that was very well protected. Michael was surprised. Is that? Yes, it is. The director smiled as he touched the strong glass box holding the special stone. This stone came from what was left of Kamish. After Kamish was beaten, two very powerful hunters moved to the United States. It was like Kamish left them here as a final gift. The United States created a special center to help hunters become stronger. They wanted to make sure something terrible like before never happened again. This was about 8 years ago. There weren't any mage hunters who were strong enough to use an important stone called Kamish's runestone, so it sat waiting in a cool room at the hunter center. The director smiled as he looked at the stone inside a glass box. He thought Kamish would help their country again. Boss, I heard yesterday, it will be hard to get permission for the gate. Jongsu, the leader of the Knights Guild, was upset when he got to work. What? Yoon-tae, the second in command, quickly explained the problem. The group's assessment showed a stronger level than they thought. Is this the highest level of gate? No, it's the next highest. A very strong A level. That's frustrating. The strongest gates were something they could handle. The Knights Guild didn't have anyone strong enough for the very highest level, so those gates weren't a problem for them. Jeju Island had shown everyone that dealing with the biggest threats needed South Korea's strongest hunters. But dealing with slightly smaller threats was different. If the Knights, one of the best hunter groups in the country, couldn't handle a smaller threat, people would talk. The group was already having problems, and failing here could ruin them completely. What are we going to do, leader? I'm not sure yet. If we don't take this threat, the Fame Guild will definitely take it. The Fame Guild from the Annam area, Jongsu's eye moved quickly at just hearing their name. This threat is in our area, and you want to just let Dongwook Mod of the Fame Guild take care of it. I'm just saying what might happen, leader. Absolutely not. So you're going to try and handle it. Jongsu was angry, and bit his lip tightly. He understood why he needed to stay calm. It was important not to say anything rash when so much was at stake, because the safety of his teammates depended on it. He could feel a headache starting. Their top hunters were just as skilled as anyone from the bigger groups. They had a similar number of skilled hunters, and their abilities were as good as those in the Hunters Guild, which was considered the best in Korea. The biggest problem was that they didn't have any hunters at the highest level. The Knights Guild was in danger of falling from being one of the top 5 groups, because they needed a hunter with an S rank. Their best hunters could easily handle most average threats labeled as a rank. But if a threat had a lot of magic power, it became very dangerous. Even though it was labeled as a rank, the strong magic made it almost as hard as an S-rank threat. And their hunters were at risk without a powerful S-rank hunter to help. The Hunters Association wasn't sure if they should allow the team to enter. Jongsu kept thinking about it when Yoon-tae spoke carefully. Leader, we'll be in big trouble if it turns out to be a dangerous gate. You're right. A difficult gate was already a problem. But if it became a really dangerous one. Just thinking about it was scary. If things went well, maybe half of the team would make it. If not, everyone, including Jongsu, could be killed. The sensible thing to do would be to forget about it. But if anyone found out they had given up on such an important task, they would be in big trouble. What new player would want to join a team that didn't have a top hunter, and couldn't even finish a difficult challenge? Maybe we can work with another team. Jongsu shook his head. Why would they agree if they know we're asking for help? Because we can't do it alone. They could easily complete the challenge themselves without needing to include us. Even if another group agreed to help, that would cause more trouble. It would be like telling everyone we couldn't handle things ourselves. The two men became more worried. If we can't get help from another group, what about just one more person? They turned to look at the woman who had spoken from the side of the room. Yerimjung was a very skilled healer, ranked A, and part of the best fighting team. Healers were important during dangerous missions, and an S-rank healer like Yerim had a lot of influence. But the Knights Guild was in serious trouble, and Jongsu felt worried and unsure of what to do. We're going into a very difficult and dangerous area. So what could one person? Jongsu stopped speaking suddenly. Then he remembered someone. He pictured a man who could defeat even the strongest magical creatures, those ranked A and even SS. Jongsu was very excited and stood up quickly. What if Jin Woo-sung joined their team for the mission? This man had defeated a dangerous magical creature that a whole group of very strong hunters could not. If Jin Woo helped them, he would keep everyone on the team safe. This was a great idea. The Knights Guild wouldn't be seen as needing help from another group. It would actually make their reputation even better. There really wasn't anything bad about it. This plan would save the lives of their friends, and also helped the Knights Guild regain their good name. Jongsu excitedly asked what Hunter Sung was doing lately. Yurim, who first suggested they talk about this, and Yute, who had been listening, didn't know. He's been quiet except for getting rid of a strange gate that showed up in the road.
Yute said, remembering something he'd seen on the news.
He got his cell phone out. Should I find his phone number, sir? No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. What? We can't do something so important on the phone. We need to talk to him face to face. Oh, I understand. Jongsu smiled at Yuntae. We are going to Seoul. That night Haerin hid under her blanket, and felt very embarrassed. I think so? Did I really say I thought so? That was like admitting something. She moved around nervously and then stopped still when she had a new idea. But then how should Haein understand what Jinwoo meant? Isn't there a better way to fix this than joining the guild? Haein had said she needed time to think about it. Really, she just wanted to leave. Thinking about that moment always made her mind go blank. She felt her face get hot as she remembered it again. When Haein saw the wild look in the large creature's eyes, she felt like something terrible was going to happen. She was really scared for anyone who might be in danger. Haein closed her eyes when she saw claws reaching for her from both sides, but then she felt warmth behind her, and a smell she knew well. She slowly opened her eyes and looked over her shoulder. Jinwoo was standing there, holding the creature's claws tightly, and looking very angry at it. That moment really made her heart race. But do you like me or something? Asking that question right then felt unfair, didn't it? No, wait. Haein shook her head, trying to forget the idea. Even if Jinwoo had asked her, she shouldn't have told the truth. He might think she was strange, but she didn't mean to ask. She told herself to stay quiet, but she spoke anyway. It just happened because she felt comfortable with him, like she wasn't acting like herself. Was that strange? Those words sounded familiar to Haein, but she couldn't remember where she'd heard them before. She had definitely heard something like that before, and then a forgotten memory quickly appeared in her mind. Please tell him. Haein sat up quickly. It hadn't been long ago, but the quiet voice from deep within her memories felt like trying to remember a dream. After waking up, please tell him that. Who was this voice? Haein tried to remember whose voice it was, and what the message meant. It was blurry, like looking through a thick fog, but things were slowly becoming clearer. I needed to tell him to be careful. I met Hunter Bai, Eungu Min, when she was passed out, and felt lost in darkness. Bai Eungu was the one who helped her. It had felt a little strange when the quiet darkness was broken, but that feeling didn't last long. She thought it was odd that Bai Eungu was wearing dark armor. She could only really see his face, and he looked unusually sad. Pion suddenly felt cold as she remembered this. Bai Eungu had seemed like he was trying not to cry when he spoke. Tell Hunter Jinwoo Sung. Tell Hunter Jinwoo Sung. Please tell him he needs to be careful with his power. Jinwoo stood looking at himself in the bathroom mirror after his shower. He thought he looked pretty good. He still found it hard to believe someone as pretty as Haein liked him, and would even consider joining a different guild because of him. Was he really that good looking? Jinwoo smiled as he looked at his reflection. He wasn't about to become someone who was overly proud of how they looked, but there was one thing he felt really good about. He had worked hard and completed every single quest each day. Because of this, he had gotten much stronger, and even grown taller, but he felt like being strong and tall was the only good thing about him. His face was pretty normal, except for his very focused eyes. He looked like someone you might see anywhere. But wait a minute. Jinwoo looked closely at his reflection. He moved closer to get a better look. The Jinwoo in the mirror and the real Jinwoo looked at each other for a moment. He noticed something interesting. He looked closely at his face, and like he thought, things had changed. He hadn't had many noticeable scars, marks, or imperfections, but now they were all gone. Was this because of the special ability he got for being a player? One of the rewards for becoming a player was that any injuries or marks on his body would heal. The special ability was strong enough to heal his leg, after the stone statue cut it off, so it could definitely make him look better too. What he noticed was he really did look younger. He was in his 20s, but when he looked at himself now, Jinwoo thought people might think he was only 19 or 20 years old. That was incredible. He had heard that magical energy could slow down aging for powerful creatures, so maybe this was something like that. Okay, he thought. That was enough. It felt strange to look at himself in the mirror for so long, So he left the bathroom. Jinna came out of her room at the same time, and the brother and sister walked into the living room together. Jinwoo smiled and called to her. Hi. Yeah, what do you think of your older brother? What about you? Like, do you think I'm good looking now that I'm older? What? Gina raised her eyebrows. Where is all this sudden confidence coming from? To me, you're still just the same little brother I've always known. Oh, thanks. Jinwoo pinched her cheek, and she quickly kicked him in the shin as usual. Of course she ended up hurting herself. Have you forgotten who I am? How do you manage to study so well? Gina frowned and looked angrily at Jinwoo. I got the highest score in the whole school on the practice test. Just so you know, Jinwoo thought her response was funny, but he tried not to smile,